What's going on, y'all? This is Brian here, man. I just wanted to come and share with y'all something that I've been working on the last 2 weeks. Those of you who have been following me know I've been through about 6 or 7 front lips within the past 2 years or so. This time I wanted to do something a little different. I wanted to actually carbon skin my own carbon fiber front lip. I went ahead and did the side skirts as well while I was at it. So I just wanted to take you guys along the ride and show you what I went through, and hopefully y'all like it.
We got this Bondo filler, man. I had to take this and apply it in between each crease. As you can see, this is like a 3-piece splitter. I had to take some fiberglass strips and lay it over some epoxy just to make sure this whole thing functions as one whole splitter.
All right, now we're working on the top side. Let me show you guys what it looks like.
So now we flip it over to this side. As you can see, man, it's like ABS carbon. I wasn't really a fan of the fake look. So yeah, like I said, I used that Bondo filler. I also cut those nails that was sticking through, and I had to sand it down. I use 80 grit just so that the epoxy has something to grab onto. And these are the fiberglass strips that I was referring to. This is the right side that I had to do just to reinforce the strength. And then I also had to do the same on the left side as well. So now I had to take the Bondo filler, apply that over those fiberglass strips, and then sand it down. So I did a 60 to 80 and then to 120, sanding it down so it can be as smooth as possible all around. And of course, after you sand, it's always good to wipe it down. First, I wiped it down with like a wet rag, and then as you can see right here, I used some alcohol just to clean all the contaminants off. So I'm wiping this entire lip down to make sure it's clean. And here's like a little piece on the end that I cut off. The original size extended just a little bit beyond my fender line, so I had to shave it down about an inch. So then I had to rebuild the edge because then it would flex, causing a weak point, especially when applying epoxy over carbon fiber. So here I am mixing the Bondo filler and applying it on the edge just to get that strength back as if it was OEM. And as always, once you do that, you have to sand it down smooth. I think this is like a 120 grit. And, clean it down with alcohol, of course. Get rid of the contaminants. This is what it looked like after the sanding. And I think it's about ready to be epoxied up at this point. But first, this is the piece that I trimmed off. Just wanted to show y'all what that looked like. All right, so now I'm mixing the epoxy, part A, with a hardener, part B. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. Probably would have been better to use a measuring cup instead of just a solo cup, but hey, I had to use what I had. This is some epoxy black dye. It's good to start with a black base whenever you're working with carbon fiber. It's easy for the carbon to show through transparently. Of course, we want to put an even black coat over the whole entire surface of the front splitter just so that it's all unified. The tricky thing about this is that once you get ready to lay the carbon fiber down, you have to wait until the epoxy is at a tacky stage before you lay the carbon fiber down. So it has to be to the point where it's sticky, where there's no residue on your finger once you touch the epoxy. And that process can actually take 2 or 3 hours for it to reach that tacky stage. But yeah, here I am laying the carbon fiber down. This is kind of a challenge as well, because once you lay it down, you can't really pull it up or it's going to mess the pattern of the carbon fiber up. Yeah, so I was finally able to get that carbon laid down. And then, of course, once you lay it down, you have to let it cure, recommended for about 3 hours. But yeah, this is my mixing cup. I had to run to the store and get me one just because my mixing ratio was a little off. So I applied it. I let it cure overnight for about 8 hours minimum. And this was the result. After that first layer, I had to get it prepared for the second one. So I took a 120 grit sandpaper, sanding the entire carbon fiber lip down. You want to make sure that you sand it down every time so that each layer bonds properly and evenly to the surface. And you already know the deal at this point. Of course, afterwards, you got to wipe it clean, then apply some alcohol just to get rid of all the contaminants before you apply your next coat. Once you apply this coat, you have to, of course, let it get to that tacky stage again. So optimal 2 hours, depending on what kind of epoxy you have. But 2 hours should get it to that tacky state before you then reapply an additional layer. So yeah, man, that's how we looking. And I didn't tell y'all, but of course, I'm working on my other side splitters as well while doing this. But here we are again, applying an additional coat after sanding it down with 220 grit sandpaper. And starting to come together real good, actually. So here we are, man. We got all three pieces looking real good. We're just gonna repeat that same process again. Since this is the final stage, we're gonna wet sand. We're gonna go from 400 to 800 and then finish it off with 1200 grit. And then once we're done that, we're gonna apply that last clear coat. So of course, after I sanded it, I wiped it down with alcohol. And here is that 2K gloss clear coat spray. This is probably the closest thing to a OEM finish that you're gonna find on the market. So I'm gonna spray this in even layers. Gonna do 3 layers across all 3 parts. But hey, man, check this out. This is the finished product. This was my first crack at it. I think I did a pretty good job. Not perfect, but I think it's perfect enough. Now, I do think that anybody can pretty much do this carbon skinning process. Curing times can range anywhere from 2 hours to 24 hours, with some pieces needing to cure overnight. But, with some patience, I think you can get it done. But yeah, man, tell me what you guys think.